And the little red circle has appeared in the upper right-hand corner of the screen, so I know that this session is being recorded. It's my pleasure to introduce our three presenters for today's session, Dana Urer, Martha Yesowich, and Michael Engelbrecht, and they're all from the Charlotte Mecklenburg Library. I am happy now to hand over control of the presentation to Martha, who will lead off today's session. And again, please feel free to use the chat window for questions, comments, and ideas. Thank you. All right, Martha, welcome.
Thanks, Kelly. I have a music play button instead of a slide advance button on my screen. Is that something you can make happen? There we go. Thank you. Okay, like Kelly said, my name is Martha Yesowich, and I'm the Educational Partnerships Manager for Charlotte Mecklenburg Library. And one of the main duties of my job is to maintain our relationship with Charlotte Mecklenburg schools. And the big partnership that we put together this year has been around our One Access initiative. So we'll just get started talking about that. What is One Access? One Access is a collaboration, as I said, between Charlotte Mecklenburg Library and Charlotte Mecklenburg schools. We started talking about One Access in its earliest stages last winter about this time, and really wanted to get library cards into the hands of every single CMS student. And One Access seemed to be the easiest way for us to pull that off, and we'll talk a little bit more about that. One Access is actually an acronym. One stands for one number equals access for all 147,000 CMS students, and the number that they use for access to library resources is their student ID number. And then Dana's going to talk a little bit about what we did before.
So last school year, not the current one, but the year before, we started a campaign to get all the children in grades pre-K through third grade a library card. And we called it our blue card campaign simply because it was all the cards were blue. So we sent applications home with all 51,000 students at CMS in those grades. And we received about 28,000 applications back. About 10,000 of those kids had library cards, and we went ahead and issued them fine waiver cards so that they could clear their accounts and make them usable again. And then we issued another close to 18,000 cards as part of that campaign. That was very, very time intensive, especially for our staff, because we had to manually enter all those applications in and then deliver the cards to the schools. After that, we started an e-card pilot program at one of our learning communities within the school system. It was for middle school and high school students in the Project Lift learning community. And we issued them all e-cards so they could access all of our electronic resources. It wasn't for any other resources, print materials, just for electronic resources. And that was successful, but again, it was time intensive. We didn't quite get the information we needed from the school system to enter the cards into our system, so they were all kind of anonymous cards, and it wasn't the best way of tracking that information that we wanted about the usage. The next thing that popped up is last year the White House issued a challenge called the Connect Ed Challenge, and one of the components of that challenge was to make sure that every single child in a library, in a school system, had access to the public library. So it was a great thing that our CEO, as well as our county manager and our school superintendent, signed on into that Connect Ed Challenge so that we could all participate and get library cards to all the kids in the school system. And then there are lots of other library systems that have paved the way. Nashville Public Library has Limitless Libraries. Tacoma has their system. So there's lots of other systems out there who are doing similar things that we looked at, talked to about best practice, and tried to figure out exactly how we wanted to approach this.
So now I'm going to talk a little bit about how we built our partnership with Charlotte Mecklenburg schools. We really started by talking to the head of virtual learning and media services with CMS, whose name is Hope Cole, and her colleague Janet Jones, who is over all the school media coordinators from elementary school through secondary school. And like I said, they really wanted every single student to have access to the library. And that's 147,000 students in 168 schools across Mecklenburg County, from Huntersville up by Lake Norman all the way down to the South Carolina border. And then Charlotte-Mecklenburg Library serves about, at that time, 300,000 active library card holders in 20 branches, and our annual circulation is over 6 million. And we were really inspired to strengthen the partnership between our two agencies by a Pew Research Center finding that said that 85% of Americans want their libraries to work more closely with their local schools to really provide resources and make the library a part of every student's life. And so we started out last year with a memo of understanding that launched the Blue Card campaign, and also said that there would be an educational partnerships manager hired by Charlotte-Mecklenburg Library, funded by the county, that would really focus on this partnership. And so I came on board about a year ago. We started meeting with CMS and talking about what can we do, how can we get cards into the hands of every student. And it didn't take us long to realize that part of the financial burden of the Blue Card campaign had actually been the cards themselves. I'm sure you know from doing library card sign-up campaigns that library cards cost money. And how could we make this a more seamless experience? And what we seized upon was the fact that every single CMS student has a unique student ID number that follows them from pre-K through 12th grade. And these students know their numbers. Wow, that was exciting. Students know their numbers. They use their number every day to sign into computers at school. And so if they looked at that number as a way that they got on the internet, a way that they got into our databases, a way that they could walk into the library and check out books, then that would be that one number that would equal access. And so Dana and I met with Hope Cole and had the conversation about how do we get every student access, and walked back to the library talking about, well, if we could do this thing with the library, with the student ID numbers, wouldn't that be amazing? Except there was a problem. Every one of our library cards has 14 digits and begins with a prefix of 23114. And we didn't know if we could convince our ILS, our integrated library system, to recognize any other kind of number. And so that's where Michael Engelbrecht came in. And we got back to the library and we went to Michael and we said, Michael, can we make this happen? Can we make Horizon recognize another number as a library card number? And Michael said,
I don't think so.
And so then we asked again, we said, but Michael, it would be amazing. Look, we could suddenly have 147,000 new library users, and all they would have to do is type in their student ID number, and they could check out books. Can you make that happen? And Michael said,
no, I can't do that.
And then there was the day that Dana cornered Michael. And she said, Michael, imagine a classroom full of students, and the teacher says, open up your Chromebooks, type in your student ID, and let's start researching. And everybody is logged onto the library and researching and learning together. And flags waved and angels sang, and Michael said,
after wiping the tears from my eyes, I said yes.
And so on our next slide, Michael's going to talk a little bit about the technical logistics that went into his heroic act.
Thank you, Martha. When it came to the technical parts of One Access, the ones that I could control were very easy. And the first one being, like Martha alluded to, eliminating the need for a library card to be 14 digits and to start with a prefix. And so we turned off that restriction, and now a library card in our ILS Horizon by Cersei Dynex can be anything, really. And so these student numbers that range from 6 or 7 characters to up to 12 would all work. And so once we realized that we could use the library card, it became a question of what is this library card going to be able to do? And so a team of people from across our system came up with circulation rules. Most of our cards check out 99 items. This special card checks out 10. Most of our cards, of course, accrue fines. This card does not accrue fines. It does have lost fees if the item never comes back, because we wanted to make sure that fees were not the reason why the student could not use the card. And once we got past what is this card going to do, how are we going to make it work, it became how are we going to get all of our vendors to use this unique library card. And a lot of our vendors use SIP authentication, which talks directly to Horizon. And so with those vendors, it became the issue of just making sure that they didn't limit their login form to only look for 14-digit numbers. And so once we got that fixed, they were ready. And then there were some vendors that didn't use SIP authentication at all. And so for most of them, it just became the process of getting them set up with SIP authentication so that all library cards that tried to log in would be checked live against Horizon. And that was lengthy because we have a lot of vendors that we work with. The last technical challenge was taking a spreadsheet of 150,000 students with all of their information, address, birth date, telephone number, school, and grade, and massaging that information so that it could be imported into Horizon. And that was a time-consuming, lengthy process. And when you talk to your school system about that, just keep that in mind that you're taking a database with one kind of information and massaging it to fit into a database that needs other kind of information. And so, those getting things to work in Horizon, getting things to work with the vendors, and getting the school data to work within Horizon are kind of the three-legged stool of the technical part of One Access. Martha?
And so now we're going to take a minute and see if anybody has any questions about any of this technical stuff. You can go ahead and type in the chat room. There we go. Michael, there's a question in there for you.
I guess, Joyce, thank you for your question. None of this was especially technical. When it came to making it so that Horizon would use these unique numbers, it was literally unchecking a box. So CDIAC had to tell me where that box was, but once they did, it was easy. And then it came time to how many online vendors do you have? When it comes to clout, which is something that I think is an interesting topic, I wasn't asking most of these vendors to do anything they weren't already doing. I was asking them to make a tweak to their web page form, or in some cases, I had vendors that weren't using SIP with us, but were using SIP with a lot of their other customers, and so it just became a conversation on some settings and some firewall changes that then allowed that to happen. And so I don't feel like at any time that I only got something done with one of these vendors or my ILS vendor because I was Charlotte-Mecklenburg Library and we're a big county and pay them a lot of money. Anything else? I see some other people are typing. Okay, yes. Well, Crystal, the question of duplicate cards is something that we hear about a lot. And what we decided is, already we have a system of anyone in the county can have a personal library card. And then we have teachers can apply for what's called a teacher card. It has different circulation rules, and they can have that card at the same time as having a personal card. We viewed the One Access card like a teacher card. It was in addition to a regular library card. It had different rules, like, for instance, students cannot check out DVDs or CDs on their One Access card. But on their regular library card, they could check out all those things. And so the issue of duplicate cards, we accept and even encourage duplicate cards in this instance because the cards give you different things. Oh, Erica, we were already collaborating with some with NC Live on doing true SIP authentication, And I don't know where they stand with other member libraries on that kind of login. And so we had already been working on that before One Access came along. But One Access did mean that we had to get true SIP authentication to work with NC Live, because NC Live could no longer say all library cards are 14 digits and start with 23114, just like our other vendors. And so getting NC Live to work with you is probably the second most important vendor after your ILS vendor, I would guess.
I'm going to jump in and answer Yvonne's question here about an estimate for budget allocation for this initiative. Honestly, the budget for this initiative is all in marketing, not in actual implementation, because we didn't purchase library cards. It's just the number. There was no supply budget there. And then we've had to allocate money for flyers. We had to print and distribute the letters to parents that we'll talk about a little bit, allowing parents the opportunity to opt out of the initiative if they didn't want their child to participate, which is how we got around some privacy concerns, and I'll talk about that a little bit more in a minute. And then we've done brochures about resources, things like that. And then the next question that Margaret has about multiple cards, I can answer that, and if you need more information, Michael can elaborate. Horizon does not connect cards at all. I know some ILS systems you can kind of connect families in a cluster, or if a person has a personal card and a teacher card, you can connect those two cards. We can't do that at all, so they're completely separate. Does anybody else want to type something, and we'll move on. We'll have some more time for questions at the end. Okay, I don't see anybody typing, so we're just going to kind of keep going. If you've got anything else to say, throw it into the chat box. Dana is watching the chat to make sure that we answer everything. And so next is, what can students access? Like Michael said, these library accounts are just like a regular library card with a couple of differences. They do have access to all of our ebooks and resources, including NC Live and some of the other things that we pay for. They have internet access in the branch. They have access to check out up to 10 physical books or audio books or combination. We do not allow One Access accounts to check out DVDs or music CDs, partially because of the cost if they lost them, partially because DVDs have a different fine structure, and so rather than looking at the possibility of losing overdue fees from that, we just said don't check them out at all. And then as far as fines and fees go, like Michael said, these accounts do not accrue overdue fines. As long as the student brings back the book, we're fine. We know that students spend time at different parents with different addresses, grandparents, cousins. There's always a situation where high school students might spend some time couch surfing because of issues at home, and we don't want to be another barrier in their life. So as long as they can get that book back to us in reasonable condition, everything's fine. Now, if the book falls in the pool or gets left somewhere permanently or the dog eats it, the student is responsible for replacement cost of the book. And then as far as parent information and the Educational Privacy Act goes, we sent a letter to every single parent or home with every single student in CMS, which means that some families received several letters saying that this initiative was happening and that the parent had the option of opting their child out at any time. The Educational Privacy Act states that a school system can provide directory information about its students to a partner agency as long as the parent is given the option to opt their student out. And then, as all you guys know, in North Carolina, because of state statute, our customer patron information is confidential. So once the information made the move from the school database to our database, it's completely confidential. And then I see a question in the chat room. I'm going to let Dana go ahead and answer that one.
So the question is, how long before you would consider an item lost if it isn't returned? Our items have to be checked out for more than 60 days for them to be considered lost, and then they're turned over to our collection agency. And Joyce asked, you mentioned a question that has the right to give directory information to a partner and partnering with the schools. Do you have access to demographic data to analyze alongside usage data such as race, free and reduced lunch program, etc.? We do not have access to that. We haven't ever requested access to that. As Martha mentioned before, we do construct a memorandum of understanding each year with the school system, and if we felt that we could use that data, that would be a request that we would include within that memorandum of understanding. Erica is still typing.
Okay, I'm going to go on to the next slide and we'll catch up with Erica. And then I just wanted to give you a quick overview of our available online resources. We do have full access to NC Live. We also have some additional resources like tutor.com, which is free online tutoring that's available every evening. Students can access that from school or from home or from the library. We have a great teen health and wellness resource that has gotten a lot of use from high school students, and we're kind of excited that they're looking up things from a reputable source instead of going to Yahoo Answers to find out about their health issues. I'm sure they are still checking Yahoo Answers, but maybe they'll get some reputable advice as well. We also have Zenio online magazines. We have Hoopla, which is streaming audiobooks, some video, and some music, as well as Freegal, which is another streaming music service. That's the main reason that we don't worry about giving students access to DVDs and music CDs, because we do have free online resources that allow them access to movies and music that way. And then we also really like Pronunciator, which is a language software, and we have several language immersion schools in CMS, and students can go online and practice their focus language online, which is something that teachers have been really excited about. And then our favorite resource for the little folks is Tumblebooks, which is storybooks online with a little bit of animation and music. And we have a story that we'll tell you later on about a class that really got into using Tumblebooks. And I see, what about Overdrive? Yeah, absolutely. They can get into Overdrive just like anybody else. If anything, any of our resources that are accessible with a library card are accessible to these students. And then I also see Erica's question was, are the card numbers updated each semester of the school year? We do that every 30 days. Enrollment in CMS is pretty fluid because we are such a large urban system. So on the last business day of every month, Michael accesses a secure FTP site and pulls over the changes. And so I think we're good for the moment. We'll catch up with some more questions in a second. And Dana, you want to talk about our big picture goals?
Sure. There are a couple more questions that are coming in that I'll go ahead and address before we get to that. If a student doesn't have their school ID, can they still check out a book in person with just their number? Absolutely. The kids in high school bring home their student IDs, but the kids in elementary school and middle school typically don't. So our system is set up, even our self-check, so that all they have to do is put in their student ID number. It's very rare that we actually have a kid that has the actual ID with them. And so Joyce asked, to follow Erica's question, do they lose access via these cards when they graduate high school? It seems like a huge loss of existing patrons, given that so many of them probably continue to live and work in the community. And at that point, all they would need to do is transition to a regular library card. If they're a part of our county system, or they live within the county, they can go ahead and get a library card for free with their ID. So it's pretty much an easy transition. And Margaret asked, have there been cases in which CML's costs for online resources have increased due to the very large number of borrowers added to your database? Typically, the prices for a lot of the online resources are based on either population or circulation. We have not seen any increase yet in any of our online resources. The only one that may be, we will see an increase in the near future is tutor.common, because that's based on number of actual uses. All right, so One Access goals. Some of the things that we wanted to do as part of One Access is to raise awareness not only of libraries, but also the importance of libraries to students and how it can participate in their student activities, their schoolwork, and just be an extension of the classroom. We want to make sure we contribute to academic success. One of our 3 goals within library programming is educational success. So we want to be continually contributing to that and making sure that we are part of the students' everyday life as their everyday academic career. And we also wanted to increase active card holders in circulation. We have a little over 1 million people in Mecklenburg County. We had about 280,000 active library cards last fall in Mecklenburg County. After One Access kicked off in September, we've already had over 100,000 kids who have activated their accounts. So we have 380,000 active library accounts. We just got our market penetration, our household penetration numbers the other day. 44% of all households in Mecklenburg County have an active library card now. That's up about 9% from last year, primarily because of One Access. So we also wanted to make sure we got the word out. We wanted to build awareness internally. So we were working with our staff to make sure that all of our staff were completely aware of the program before we kicked it out with the school system and with all the students. We did a lot of programs, or a lot of in-house training with our staff, a lot of blog posts, a lot of emails to make sure everybody was completely aware. Martha has led the team of teacher professional development. We've talked to teachers on all levels, a lot of media specialists, curriculum coordinators, and all different types of school settings, as well as different departments within the schools. So Martha's led a lot of that. We also had a joint press conference announcement with CMS officials. It's on YouTube if you want to see it. You can see that we kicked it off with a press conference with our library CEO, our library director, school superintendent. We got a lot of press about it. People were very excited about it. Excuse me. And One Access is part of our strategic marketing plan for the library. We have a plan that says how we're going to act to market the library to our citizens, and that's a big part of it. And it's been highly successful already. Anything else I'm supposed to say about that, Martha? Oh, this is still me.
This is your part.
This is my part. So we're talking about what the future is going to hold for One Access, what else is going to happen, because we realize that providing access to all the kids in Mecklenburg County to have library access is just the beginning. It's not the end game, it's the beginning. It leads us to be able to do so many different other things for the students and for this partnership with CMS. We're looking next year already for our memorandum of understanding of exactly what we're going to provide. And we're thinking about One Access style accounts for CMS teachers so that the teachers have the same advantage that all the students have. We're not exactly sure what that looks like yet, but we've been talking about it, and we want to make sure that the teachers are involved as well. We've been talking about, maybe not for this coming year, but for sometime in the future, to look at a courier service to deliver our materials to the schools when the students reserve the materials. And then we're also looking at expanded curriculum support. We just kicked off BiblioCommons, which is our new catalog interface, earlier this month, and we've done a lot of teacher training on how to do specific content curation within BiblioCommons, so they can teachers can point their students straight to BiblioCommons and our resources, not only our print resources, but our electronic resources as well.
And to expand on that for just a second, one of the great things about BiblioCommons is that teachers can put together specific book lists that include not only print resources but also electronic resources, point students to video information, things like that. And so we're really excited to see what we can do with that in the upcoming school year. I'm going to talk a little bit now about some practical tips to help with your planning process. I think Kelly has uploaded the PDF of a tip sheet as well that you can take a look at later. But just a few things to do as you start planning this kind of partnership or this kind of initiative. Draft a memo of understanding with the school system so that you're really clear on what you're doing for each other. Make sure that the data sharing is in there, that it meets the legal requirements of both organizations. Something that we were really lucky when we were working on our memo of understanding for this year is we had a meeting with the chief academic officer who then shuttled the draft MOU right over to their legal department, and they were able to add that FERPA privacy information to us for us, and then our attorney looked at it as well, and so we're sure that we're both protected, and we're also sure that we're doing things for each other. There's some testing data that CMS is in the process of sharing with us to help us evaluate how well our summer program helps with summer learning loss and preventing the summer slide. And so we're providing their students with access. They're providing us with help with our outcomes as well. Make sure that you're ready to really talk it up for students and families. One of the great things about One Access is that our branch staff don't have to do library card sign-up campaigns at open house anymore. Every student automatically has a library account, and so they've been really able to focus their outreach efforts on talking about the library, talking up One Access, going to family nights and saying, hey, let us show you what you can do on the computer now that everybody has a One Access account. And it's really freed them up to be more creative about how they market the library to families. And then you just have to be flexible. Things are going to come up that you're going to have to figure out. There are a couple like little funky quirks, like our library account numbers mostly have 4-digit pins, but BiblioCommons wanted a 5-digit pin. Not BiblioCommons, I'm sorry, Tutor.com wanted a 5-digit pin, which is one of those things, and so we just had to make sure that every time we talk about Tutor.com, we say, don't forget when you log in, use your student ID number and then the 5 digits for your PIN number. And then we just continually report outcomes to our stakeholders, and that's everybody from our Board of Trustees, our friends of the library, our partners at CMS. During the busiest part of the activation process, which was in the month of December, when we just had so many students activating their cards and going online and accessing our resources, we were putting together a weekly spreadsheet that we sent to our partners at CMS so they could see what schools were really active and what schools, maybe needed a nudge to encourage their students to activate their accounts. A few other things to do are make sure that you have relationships with the school administration on all levels. We talk to everyone from the school superintendent all the way down to, we've got some teacher assistants who are some of our biggest cheerleaders. They are library users themselves and then really want the students they work with to have that experience as well. We've got great support from our library administration as well. We've got Michael helping us with the tech needs and challenges. And like I said, really the only budget we've been having to access for this initiative has been our marketing budget. And so we really want to make sure we have a plan for awareness raising. And then we pulled together a team of circulation, children's, teen, and adult staff to develop the policies and procedures for these One Access accounts. That's how we decided they would be fine-free. That's how we decided that they could definitely access the internet in the libraries, things like that. So we got a couple of questions going on over here on the side. I'm going to answer a couple and then let Dana have a turn. You see that Kelly added the files that you can take a look at. Dana's thrown up the YouTube link. And then sharing our memo of understanding. Yes, we would be glad to share our memo of understanding. We did not, however, want to just throw it up as a file. So our contact information is part of this webinar, and if you drop any one of the three of us an email, we'll be happy to respond with a copy of the MOU. And then Erica has asked, how do they get the PIN number? It's really easy. They have a student ID number, and then their PIN is the last 4 digits of that ID number. So just to rattle it off, my son's ID number is 8661140, and his PIN is 1140. And so they've typed it in once, and then they just look at the last 4 digits and type that again. And they seem to handle it pretty well. Dana's going to talk about our fancy impact.
So tracking usage, there's a couple questions about what's involved in activating a one-use account. Do they have to visit the library in person? They do not have to visit the library in person because the card is good, or the account, it's not a card, the account is good for not only print materials, but for using our computers in the libraries or interacting with our catalog in some way or with one of our online resources. So as long as they interact with the library in some way where they have to log in, whether that's through our catalog or an online resource, that's an activation. We did have a challenge from our school superintendent that 100,000 kids activate their accounts by winter break, and they did meet that. We have a new challenge from our superintendent where she wants 100% of kids to activate their accounts by spring break. So we're still tracking that usage to see how that's going to go. We're able to track usage in a lot of different ways. For a while, every time we saw Michael Engelbrecht, we'd say, how many people have activated their account? And he could automatically pull that up on his phone. So he can track that in a lot of different ways through Horizon. We also utilize a market segmentation, our software called Orange Boy from Savannah. So we're able to track all of our library users by clusters to see exactly what they're doing and what their usage patterns are, not only by cluster type, but by age, by library branch that they use, a lot of different things. So we track usage in a million different ways. We also track usage by account number within our electronic resources, so we get monthly reports on how the One Access accounts are being utilized. And so we're monitoring it as much as we possibly can, and we're seeing a lot of impact. As I said before, we have household penetration has gone up by 9%. A lot of our resources, the usage has gone up a whole lot. We're also in constant communication with our school system and our teachers to see how they're utilizing it and getting a lot of great stories of impact.
And as you see on this slide, in January we had over 102,000 active One Access accounts, which again means that those students had interacted with the library in some way, either virtually or in person. And I'm going to challenge Michael to come up with a number for us by the end of this webinar of today's active accounts, and he should be able to do that. He's pretty quick. So I think we've got a couple questions coming, but we'll get to those in just a minute. I wanted to talk a little bit about the impact that One Access has had on our library resources. Circulation via Overdrive has jumped quite a bit. The circulation of juvenile and YA material has increased by 60 to 110% depending on the material type. The thing that has really shown the largest jump in Overdrive usage are juvenile nonfiction books, which really tells us that students are going into Overdrive and checking out books to use for school. They're checking out books about animals, biomes, all the things that students do reports on. They're using Overdrive to access those books. It says over in the chat room, do students use their card to access public computers within the library? Yes, they can do that. They just sit down at any of our public internet computers, type in their student ID number, and they're ready to go. Will CMS produce data or advocacy materials for other libraries around the state to use in advocating with their schools or local governments? We do have the tip sheets that can help you out as far as, you know, what to talk about and what to ask. If you have some more specific questions about advocacy, we'd be glad to talk to you about that. Dana's typing something right now, so we'll see what she has to say. Oh, she's giving our website. We update our CMLibrary.org One Access page anytime anything exciting happens, so keep an eye on that as well. And Joyce, if you're interested in more advocacy materials or some tips for working with county or school administration, we're glad to talk to you about that later on. As well as Overdrive, use of Tumble books shot up dramatically in December. We went from about 5,000 to 6,000 times Tumble book was accessed in November to Tumble books being accessed over 50,000 times in December. Students love Tumble books, teachers love Tumble books, and it was really exciting to us and to Tumble books to see how much they were using it for pleasure reading. Some of our especially popular online resources that we've been able to track the use of have been Power Knowledge, which is a science resource suite. It's physical science, life science, earth science, specifically designed for learners in grades 3 to 6. It's got some really neat things like webcams around the world. You can watch fish swim at the Great Barrier Reef. There are encyclopedia-style entries about a lot of science-related things, and students really like to use that resource. I mentioned earlier about Teen Health and Wellness, which provides middle and high school students with non-judgmental, straightforward advice and self-help support. And we're really excited not only to be able to provide that resource, but that students are really using it. We have a health science magnet here in Charlotte, and their media coordinator has been one of our biggest advocates. And she's really encouraged her students to use this resource, and I think the word's gotten out around town as well. And something else that's been really well used is World Book, which excites us a lot because World Book is not provided by CMS as a matter of course as one of their online resources. So some schools have actually paid for it themselves through PTO money or a grant from the community or something like that. And so we're excited that we can provide them with access to World Book, which frees up their budget to use it for something else within their media center. And that's really awesome for us. One more question is that there's no physical card, it's just a number. Absolutely. Students do have a physical student ID card, but only high school students carry it around with them. Students otherwise, they wear it around their neck in the classroom during school. They use it for different things at school, but they do not take it home. But they know the number because they use it so many times during the day. Or if it's a kindergartner who wants to check out a book at the library and they don't know their number, our staff is empowered to say yes to a student who comes up and says, "Can I get this book?" The staff member says, "Do you know your ID number?" They say no, and the staff member will say, "Well, tell me your name and birthday, and we'll get that book checked out to you." So we're really trying to make it where students have a positive experience every time they come into the library. So let's, moving on, we'll tell you a couple of student stories of impact that have been our favorite. This one was from the teacher assistant I told you about at Newell Elementary, which is in the university area of Charlotte. Dana, you want to tell this one with growling and stuff?
So yeah, we were very excited as students were logging in for the first time. A lot of them logged in for the first time in November and December after our superintendent, our school superintendent challenged 100,000 activations by winter break. And one of the most exciting stories we had is the one that's listed there, that the children were all in the media center and they all took turns investigating animals. And they were just making all sorts of noises, animal noises, very, very interactive, very much getting into it and learning in a variety of different ways. And so they were very excited. And as you can see, the volunteer thought that they were at the real zoo from all the screams of excitement. So we think it's a very excellent opportunity, one that the kids didn't have before, and now they do, and we're very excited about it for them. And then also, elementary school students sometimes tend to be a little easier to reach and get excited. This quote is from one of the kids that visited one of our branches. It was a teenager. When a teenager says something is cool, and they want to tell their friends about it, you have achieved success. So we're very excited when we got this is so cool, can anyone do this? And we've really heard from a lot of our librarians that the One Access is giving library access to kids who never had it before because for one reason or another they weren't able to get a library card. So we're very excited about it for them.
Yeah, and we've also heard a couple stories from parents who maybe their own card has got fines on it, or they're not using it for one reason or another. And we've had a couple parents tell our library staff that they're excited to come back to the library, that they're really grateful for this opportunity to introduce their child to the library, to have the library experience without the sort of stigma or danger of fines. And then the parents have been able to work out a pay down program for their own card, because they, could come into the library without feeling like, oh my gosh, I didn't bring that book back 5 years ago and now it's on my record. So Michael has let me know that he has today's numbers, so I'm going to let him hop on and tell us the exact number of active One Access accounts.
Well, as of 2:47 p.m. on February 18, 2016, the One Access activated card number is 104,821.
And as we always say at moments like this, yay, Michael Engelbrecht. We say that a lot. I'm going to throw out some of the questions that are going on in the chat room right now. Thanks to Lisa for saying that she's talking to her public library next month. That's really exciting. I'm glad that a lot of you guys seem to be talking about this stuff. Erica's asking, are you taking this project to other schools in the county? The way Charlotte-Mecklenburg works is that we only have one district in our county, so Charlotte-Mecklenburg Schools is it as far as public schools go in the county. We have been approached by one of the larger private schools, and we would be willing to work with other schools, but they have to be able to provide us with that unique identifier for their students. We need to make sure that they're willing to release the information to us about their students. In essence, we would have to have exactly the same memo of understanding with every single private or charter school that we worked with, which could be a little daunting. For a school that maybe only has 200 students, we would be more likely to want to do a traditional library card drive than to go through all the rigmarole that comes with a data upload. But something that we've suggested to the private schools, they do band together in a consortium they call the Charlotte Area Independent School Consortium. And if they could possibly come to some agreement among themselves and then again with us, we would be willing to do this kind of initiative with them. We were able to take the model of One Access out to Mecklenburg County employees so that every employee of Mecklenburg County now has an e-card that is accessible using their county employee ID number. That helps them access some of the training resources that we have so that the county didn't have to duplicate paying for those resources by being our major funder and then paying for the resource again for employees. We're talking to Central Piedmont Community College about doing some kind of partnership to get their students access to our resources. So we're talking to a lot of people. The data, Jenny's asking, was the data on students supplied from Power Schools? No, it was not. It came directly from Charlotte-Mecklenburg Schools IT department. I don't know if it's the same kind of info that's in Power School, but we aren't interacting directly with Power School at all. So I put up the any questions slide. So if you guys have anything else you want to know from any of the three of us, we're happy to talk to you. It looks like we've got about 10.
We have a couple of different questions too that are popping up. The first one is just to verify if parents had to opt out, not sign up, or give permission. That is correct. We have a form on our website, the cmlibrary.org/oneaccess, where parents could go and opt out. I think we've had one parent out of 147,000 who has opted out, and that was primarily because it was the grandparent who had custody of their grandchild and did not want to take responsibility for any library materials. Joyce asked, in terms of data analysis, are you planning to combine longitudinal data with the schools on student success grades or anything like that correlated with library usage? At this point, we have not made any plans to do that. Right now, our primary usage of library data for our school student data from the school system is really to measure our impact of summer reading. When children register for summer reading, they register with their student ID number as well, and so we're getting test scores, reading test scores, at the end of the school year versus the beginning of the school year for children who participate in the summer reading program versus children who don't participate in the summer reading. So that's really what we're doing with data with them right now. But sky's the limit. And Joanne says, since you don't access PowerSchool, does Michael just get a file from the school system with patron updates each month? Yes, every month the school system updates a file, and Michael retrieves it from a secure FTP server. So it's just once a month to do it.
And so
Go ahead,
far, not counting September, which is basically still the beginning of school, that's been about 700 to 900 new students each month.
Looks like we have another question coming in, so we'll give that a minute to come in. To continue on Joyce's question about data analysis and grades, etc., we're just not there yet. I think it's the kind of thing that in the future we might be interested to see, students with active accounts versus students with inactive accounts. But that would really be correlation, not causation. You can't say that because a student uses the library, that's what leads to their academic success. We have seen some correlation between library use and academic success, but that's not something that we've really explored yet. But we could. And I've also now gone to our screen that says feel free to contact us for more information. It's got all of our email addresses up there. We're happy to talk by email. If you'd like to have a more detailed conversation by phone, we can set that up. We're really excited about that. So it's pretty cool. Tanya's saying that many of the resources that schools could benefit are not offered by their public library system. I just don't know because I guess, Dana, what do you think here? Ideas how to bridge a gap if a public library system doesn't offer Tumble books in Overdrive.
Sorry, I just laughed at that question. It's one of those things that you're going to have to determine who your funders are. I assume if it's public library and public schools, your funders are both the county. Of course, that could be different. Or PTOs, I think that you're just going to have to explore what your options are of how you normally acquire online resources and see if it's something that the schools want to combine together with the library. I'm sure that the library can get a consortia kind of deal with the vendors. It's just going to require a little bit of creativity to figure out exactly how you can bridge that gap. I think the biggest way to bridge that gap is cash, but not to be crude about it, but cash.
Yeah, if you can talk somebody into giving you money, that's always a good idea because you can then subscribe to Tumble Books. Tumble Books, I know, is excited about partnerships between libraries and schools, so I'm sure they would cut you some kind of a deal if you talked about it with them, but beyond that, I'm just not sure how to magically make resources appear. And thank you so much to everybody who's taken an hour out of your day to spend it with us and learn about One Access. And like I said, we're always happy to talk via email or phone. Anybody who would like a copy of our Memo of Understanding with Charlotte-Mecklenburg Schools, we're happy to send it to you directly. And got a couple more people typing, so we'll give them a few minutes to finish up. And then Kelly, whenever you're ready to wrap things up, please just jump in.
Well, I want to say thank you to Dana, Martha, and Michael for a really exciting presentation today. It's so inspiring to see what you've done and really opening the possibilities and opportunities for others to duplicate this kind of an approach. So it's really wonderful, and thank you very much for taking your time to share with us today. I'm going to go ahead and stop the recording now.